Explained by the Billy Meier Contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Easter Island, Moai see also long skulls, see also Nazca lines. Contact Report 069.
But maybe you can reveal the secret of Easter Island to me. In particular, it is about the colossal heads, which are still a mystery to Earth humans today. Nobody knows how they came into being and who created them. May you say something about them?
The Earth human is misguided if he or she wants to make the concerns of Easter Island an isolated concern. The events of earlier times on this island are in direct connection with the country, which you still call Tiahuanaco today, as it was called already at earliest time, in spite of past repeated changes. Easter Island and Tiahuanaco are more than 5,000 kilometers apart, and yet they are directly related to each other. However, the history of the connection goes back to very early times and ended only 2,148 years ago, calculated back from today, 1976, where 572 before Emmanuel. As I once explained to you, the last decisive settlement of the Earth by extraterrestrial intelligences took place about 13,500 Earth years ago. As you know, several of the immigrant horde became renegades, including a man in the rank of a half-Ishwish called Viracocha, who was already very old and extremely power-hungry. His name is still handed down on the Earth today, but with a small change, because for a long time now, he has only been called Viracocha and also as Jeshwish, although he was only in half the rank of such a person. Under his patronage and his cruel leadership, the highlands of Tiahuanaco at an altitude of about 4,000 meters were conquered, as was the Delta Island, which you call Easter Island. After this conquest, Viracocha settled with a special bodyguard of cherubim on the small island Mott, which is situated in front of Easter Island and which you call Motunui, or similar to my knowledge today. At that time, it was called Mott because the cherubim were animal-human life forms. In this case, they were all bird-like. Mott means bird in our original language, so the island was called the Mott Island, or also the Island of the Bird People, as it is still called today. So Viracocha or Viracocha resided there. He and his followers, escaped Lyrans like many others, who came to the Earth, were of gigantic physique, by earthly measure about 11 meters tall. They were the ones who taught the dwarfish, normal-growing inhabitants of Tiahuanaco and Easter Island, who were procreations between Earthlings and previously immigrated intelligences from the vastness of the universe, in many things, providing them with their own highly developed technology and teaching them how to operate the devices and machines. Thus, they also taught the natives of Tiahuanaco and Easter Island the work of stonemasonry, and they let themselves be celebrated as gods. With the help of the giants and their machines and other equipment, the natives worked many meters large head formations out of the lava stone, placed these, also with the help of machines, randomly around the island. Similar events took place in the areas you call Pisco, Nazca, and Sacsayhuaman because the same giants had settled there. Thus, many statues and other structures were created, whereby also the shape of the spaceships on Easter Island were reproduced from rocks of the lava walls which have survived to this day, namely oval-shaped stones, because the spaceships had this shape. After several centuries, the exact time is also veiled to us. The giants were attacked by a sudden epidemic that was unknown to them and cost the lives of many of them. Finding no cure for the epidemic, they fled Earth in their spaceships, set off into space, and have since disappeared. Despite the most eager investigations of our scientists, no trace of them has been found to this day. There is therefore the possibility that, despite their flight from Earth, they were attacked and killed by the mysterious plague in their spaceships, while their ships shot aimlessly through space were attracted by some star and smashed to pieces. Our probability calculations very much favor this. Especially on Easter Island, the fleeing giants left behind a desperate people who were suddenly deprived of all technology because their giant gods had taken everything with them. So also several hundred unfinished head statues remained in the lava walls of the volcano craters in order to never be completed. In complete desperation, the islanders tried to retrieve their escaped gods by trying to complete the unfinished stone heads with primitive stone fist wedges, which of course failed miserably and was abandoned after a few years. Despite much research, we could not find out why the islanders believed that by completing the stone heads, they could bring back the giant gods. This is an unsolvable riddle for us. Since the completion of the stone heads failed miserably, the call became loud after some years that the putting on of bright red hats would calm the escaped giants and bring them back. But how and why this call came about is also a mystery to us. In any case, some crane-like machines and other primitive aids were used to build scaffolds and platforms on the many gigantic heads that already existed, after which large hats were poured onto the heads from a mixture of red earth, sand, and small stones. Some dozens of such hats, whose original form is also a mystery to us, were made in a small volcanic crater, which after their completion were rolled to the heads and lifted up by the crane-like machines. According to our probability calculations, these hats must have been imitations of helmet-like structures of the giants, which we will probably not be able to prove. In general, many concerns about these giants and their activities on Earth at that time are mysterious to us, and we cannot find a solution for it. We only know that the giants left their last sign of life somewhere in a distant solar system of the constellation known to you as Andromeda, where exactly we do not know because there, somewhere on an inhabited world, they brought the knowledge of the existence of the Earth, after which from there, thousands of years later, a larger expedition started and reached the Earth. They were members of a human race of an average size of 106 who brought a message from the giants of Tiahuanaco and lived there for 20 years and 7 months. This was, calculated back from today, very exactly 2,568 years ago. We could clearly see that. During the nearly 21 years of stay of the Andromedans, unknown to us, they established a quite high culture, built electrical energy centers, whose wiring they laid under the ground, protected by half-pipe channels created by them, over which your scientists still today break their heads, because they are not able to fathom their precision manufacture and do not grasp the purpose. Like the giants, the Andromedans, who were unable to adapt properly to the Earth's climate and atmosphere, were struck by the same mysterious plague after about 20 years, causing them to flee in panic. They, too, have since disappeared, and probably all have perished. This, dear friend, is in broad outline the story around Easter Island, Tiahuanaco, and some other regions. Unfortunately, I do not know more about it. The stone formations clearly show very sharp, narrow-lipped and pinched mouth parts, unusually low forehead shapes, as well as extremely deep eyes.
Okay, but these giants, were they only in the places you mentioned, or were they, or others, in other places on the Earth?
This race stayed exclusively in the areas I mentioned.
Contact Report 230.
On Friday, 10th of December 1976, Sim Yase explained to me all sorts of things about the Easter Island and its inhabitants, as well as about the stone-head colossuses. Thereby she also spoke about machines that originated from extraterrestrials. With them, the colossal heads were made, transported, and erected. Unfortunately, she did not describe these machines in more detail, but it would be important for us to know what kind of machines they were. She also spoke of cranes and other devices that the extraterrestrials made available to the islanders. Somehow, I find that it was irresponsible of the extraterrestrials to put their technology into the hands of such underdeveloped human beings of Earth.
This open engagement with Earth humans who were still so primitive is also incomprehensible to us, so we can only surmise the assumption that the far-traveled people must have been refugees who settled with the islanders in order to have a place of refuge with them that was not anticipated there by persecutors. This assumption is also based on the fact that the foreigners did not make their actual high technology available to the islanders, as you call them, because the machines Sim Ya-se reported on were primitive constructions made of palm wood. At that time, the Easter Island was densely forested with palm trees, which were cut down in masses until extinction. The palm wood was used for the construction of primitive machines, which Sim Yase told you about. Hence, the heads sculptured, that is to say, chiseled out of lava rock, were for transportation hoisted onto machines made of palm wood and transported with them. When the head colossi created by stonemasons were finished, round tree trunks were shoved under the figures, which were made with lianas, etc., to a trunk-dragging sledge. However, these triangularly manufactured trunk-dragging sledges did not rest on the ground, but on further palm wood trunks, which were likewise triangular and arranged in a long row up to the destination. In this way, the head colossi could be transported over long distances as if on rails, and so that the head figures, weighing many tons, could glide properly on the debarked palm wood trunks. They were both smeared with greasy things and continuously wetted with water. The power of movement of the trunk-dragging sledges was a large number of human beings, who pushed these dragging sledges with wooden poles jerkily, while others pulled the whole thing forward on long ropes made of lianas, etc., in order to then place the heavy structures on prefabricated platforms. Ramps were built from lava stone, on which the head giants were shoved, after which the trunk-dragging carriage with the stone colossus resting on it was lifted centimeter by human power and continuously supported underneath again with lava stones. In addition, from behind first small and then ever larger palm wood poles were shoved under the dragging sledge, and thereby everything was prevented from falling back. In addition, further ropes were attached to the uppermost part of the stone head, which extended to the front and were pulled by human beings, whereby overall a crane procedure resulted. These were the machines Sim Yase reported on.
And regarding Easter Island, we misunderstood everything, because we were assuming that the aliens had made their own machines available to the islanders.
The foreigners actually only revealed instructions and cognitions regarding how the still very primitive Earth humans could build their own devices and primitive machines for their use by the simplest means and develop a special technique.
Contact Report 710.
This, like for example also the heads on the Easter Islands, which were transported and erected there with the help of Earth foreigners, as also happened in other places, where it is seriously claimed that not Earth foreigners, but the Earth foreigners themselves transported the enormous weights of tons rolling on tree trunks, and then also lifted up the monoliths weighing many tons with tree trunks and other wood and multiple manpower, etc. Svath took me to such places many times, and let me see everything as it was tremendously impressive and real, and quite different from what our wise men of research and science claim.
Contact Report 829.
So, I think I may now speak openly and say that beings from the depths of the space of this universe visited the Earth before there were Earthlings. Since then, however, their descendants have come here again and again, creating many things for the human beings of the Earth in the last 390,000 years or so, which were often only achieved with hovering techniques. Especially what concerned the moving, setting up and stacking of building elements weighing tons, such as 10, 20, 30, 50 tons, or even heavier elements, was done by technology that made it possible to levitate the materials. In very few cases, something was also moved telekinetically, but this was a real rarity. The processing of the heavy elements was usually done by machine, if one may say so to what was just used. The machining was done such that the elements were so accurate to the hundredth or even thousandth of a millimeter that everything fitted together in such a manner that practically not even a hair could be pushed in between. This is precisely something that the clever earthlings of today, who deal with these things of the past in big words and knowing, cannot understand how everything really came about in this respect. Their wild fantasies of how it was and how it all came about are truly hilariously daft. Well, when the Earthlings at a much later time, as a result of traditions, etc., worked, hewed, and chiseled stones, that was primitive again. But the fact is that the Earthlings at that time did not have heavy machinery with which they could have done everything, and especially not with human power, as many archaeologists, etc., imaginatively spout about and think up the most impossible constructions with which the human beings of earlier civilizations are supposed to have made the impossible possible and managed it. Also, with guidance and assistance, entire cities were built all over the earth, some of which, however, sank in the seas or in large lakes in later times as a result of natural phenomena, were overgrown by primeval forests, or others were covered by sand drifts.
Contact Report 832.
Now, also the thousands of languages of Earth humans, as well as the gods and their worship, and the religions and faiths arising from them, as well as the technologies by which many things were erected in ancient times which would have been impossible by human beings' powers, were therefore not created by Earth humans alone, but by the knowledge and the energy and the capabilities which were from outside the Earth.
But you should mention that we Playaran and our very distant ancestors, who first came to Earth already 25 million years ago, were in no manner involved in these developments, just as we also never had anything to do with the foreigners, so they still today and never in the future will be able to contact us or fathom our presence.
Contact Report 836.
Therefore he or she, the Earthling, the human being, also does not know that actually the alembracing being depends on swinging waves, as also on sounds resulting from them. The sun, as the authoritative celestial body of the system, orders the distance of planets away from it in its system area by means of swinging waves and sounds. Something that is obviously not yet known to the great science of astronomy, because at least I have never heard of it. But it is the case, as I learned from Svath and was able to sense and hear through his apparatus, that every system satellite actually orbits around the sun with a very specific swinging wave, that is to say, vibration. This swinging wave also corresponds to a very specific wavelength as well as an impulse, which in turn produces a special sound. I could perceive, that is to say, feel and hear all this through Svath's equipment. And such swinging waves and sounds were also known and useful to the faraway travelers, who also used them in early times on Earth and produced monumental works with them. They were even able to move the heaviest things through the air with it, which I mentioned years ago when I mentioned something about the building of pyramids in Egypt. At that time, I simply used the term telekinesis to explain it, because it is possible through the powers of thought, which it actually was. But in this respect it was used to handle everything in the manner that certain swinging waves were used in connection with sounds. So basically, I said at that time what is really true. But I did not explain that it was not a matter of mental teleportation in the actual sense, in order to transport the heavy cuboid blocks for the building of the pyramids, but precisely through a teleportation that was based on swinging waves and sounds, in other words, in a natural manner. If natural energy and power were used at that time to lift and levitate, then it was done in a different manner than through the actual application of thought power. And this was actually used at that time and even earlier for transport by those who had traveled far and wide, also for the precise production of the huge cuboid blocks, which today could not be moved even with huge machines and could not be produced so skillfully with all modern tools.
Contact Report 849.
Our ancestors were never involved in bringing any religions to Earth, just as no buildings, etc., were created by them, as the earlier foreigners did on the other hand, and elevated themselves above Earth's humanity.